G'day, hi, and welcome. Alright, so I'm going to do another one of these voiceovers. This is just basically never crossing the line. Something I've been noticing, I noticed it years ago, and I still notice it to this day. After I get back into riding, it seems like some of the rider bad habits that one of the biggest ones is for riders crossing the line. And I wrote an article on this from the making of this video last night, but from the making of this video, so. And a lot of people responded to it, and I thought I'd make a video about it too. I know I kind of double up. I do a video, and then I do I'll write a blog on my blogger there. One of the things that I've noticed, and it's mainly with people riding heavier bikes, not so much light little bikes like mine and 400s and stuff like that, but bigger, heavier bikes like tour bikes, Harleys, Gold Wings, Venturas, I guess even those big Indians that are out there now, those things, those Roadmasters, wow, what a piece of technology that is. But anyway, I'm riding down the road. My dad's mentioned this to me too. He goes, well, why do some of those bikers ride so close to the line all the time? And like most places around the world, you usually have like a double solid line in the middle. It's usually two yellow lines, or it'll break and you could have either two broken lines which are passing. It could be broken on one side or the other to pass on the left or the right, whatever it might be. And there's a lot of things I notice, even though I'm, again, treating myself as if I'm new and just getting back into it again. One of the things I notice is a lot of riders ride really, really close to the yellow line, and this is kind of a bad idea. Now, coming out onto the street here, okay, so I'm going the other way, no problem, but I pulled out in my lane, whatever. But if I was going right, what I find is, and this cost a lady her life about a week ago from the making of this video, she was pulling out of the laneway or whatever, and she crossed over the yellow line, and you'll see people do this. They'll cross over the yellow line, the center line, and then come back in it's like it takes them like 40 acres to turn the bike, you know what I mean? And I think that's because they're not confident in their low-speed handling. You can give me all the excuses. Well, it's a big bike, and with my right foot on the back brake, whatever. I don't have that much clearance. No, it doesn't work for me because I've ridden bikes as big as 1500 cc's, like a Vulcan 1500. I've ridden Gold Wings. I've only ridden the 1200. This is years ago. I used to work in a bike shop, and man, I would ride that thing out of the parking lot, and it was a tight squeeze. Like these were tight lanes to turn, but I'd never cross the line with it. This year I'm pretty good. I've only crossed the line accidentally on two really tight curves. Twice, so it's not too bad. But when you catch yourself doing it, correct yourself, because it will cost you your life. So what happened to this lady is she pulled out, and I guess she was turning right. She came over the double line and head on into a car, not even at really high speed, but it was enough to stop the bike dead. She went flying, broke her neck, whatever, and died, right? Didn't have to happen. And this is not the first person that this has happened to. The other one is people riding, and I notice it more with those T-Rexes, those trikes, where the guy or girl who's riding, they're riding on the line, but their tires over the line. I don't think they realize it because the bike is so, it's nearly 4 feet wide, right? So they're over the line. Whether your handlebar, your mirror, or your tires are over the line, you're over the line. You're over the line, and you might not look at it the way I'm going to look at it, because I don't look at it as who's at fault. I look at it as if you get hurt, if a mishap happens, we're the ones getting hurt. The other guys, if the car's at fault, I still get hurt. Maybe they get hurt, but most likely I'm going to be hurt. If I'm at fault, I get hurt. You know what I mean? So I don't really look at it whose fault it is. I look at it, how do we avoid getting ourselves into trouble. So you got people that ride really close to the line. Now, if it's a double line, that's bad enough, because what'll happen if somebody's coming the other way, and I notice pickup trucks are the worst for this, especially those big F-150s or whatever. Even on a shallow curve, they cross the line. And if there's a consecutive twist of curves, like an S-bend going through, they almost pickup trucks almost always just drive right through the center. They come over the line quite a bit. And I already did the video about 3 lanes versus 6 lanes. I always tend to try to stay away from the center line, a fair bit. Like at least I'm not quite in the center of my lane, but be like if we were to break the lanes up into 6, going from left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So your left third of the lane, break it up to an inner and outer. 1 and 2, and I usually ride in number 2 spot. So I'm close to the line, but I'm not. My handlebar never goes over the line. My wheels don't go over the line. My mirrors don't go over the line. I don't go over the line. So I'm not really in the number 2 lane that we'd normally associate as the middle lane. I'm somewhere in between number 2 and number 3. So I'd call that, like, again, if we break the lane up into 6, that type of thing. Or if there's a lot of oncoming traffic and there's not too much ahead of me and not too much behind me, I then tend to move way over to the right. Why? 2 things. Number one, when you're close to the line and you got oncoming traffic, you probably don't realize this, but even, and I still to this day can't figure out, nothing has changed in 20 years. You're riding on a highway like this, and you've got all the room in the world, and everybody rides like 30 feet from everybody's bumper. Like, what's the rush? Give yourself some distance, whether you're in a car or on a bike. But if you're riding close to the line, the driver's coming at you. If the other guy behind you, if you can't see the guy behind the person coming at you, they can't see you. Now, if they go to pass, you can have a really bad day. So moving over a bit is a good idea. And I'll talk about that riding strategies a little bit later on, but it's just something to keep in mind. A lot of times I find when I move out to the white line, when there's a lot of traffic coming the other way and they're riding bumper to bumper, I end up seeing cars that I didn't even know were there. That type of thing. So you don't want to ride that line too much. Now, crossing over the line, we know cars, like, again, even in a straight line, they tend to cross over from time to time, not realizing it. So you don't want to be hugging that line. You really don't want to be hugging that line. I think that point's well made. But the big one, where bikers are usually to blame, is usually on the corners. Now, we know that the cars are and trucks are going to come over. We should anticipate that they're going to come into our lane when they're coming the other way. And the thing about that is that we should be anticipating that they're going to do it anyway. So we should already be making up. Is it fair? No, it's not fair, but we should be compensating for that ahead of time. So when we're coming into our curves, we want to make sure that we're not overblowing the curve. And you'll see typically heavier bikes do this and I think there's a couple of reasons why they do it. It's not that the rider's usually inexperienced. It's that the rider doesn't realize the limitations of particularly like big bagger bikes. They tend to be a lot lower to the ground. Bagger bikes, and I don't want anybody to take offense to this, but they typically don't corner. They're not like my sport bike. That thing corners. I mean, that thing will turn. You can go around it. You can put a nickel on the ground and do figure eights around it. You know what I mean? It's like a clown bike. It only weighs 374 pounds. A big, 2 up on a Goldwing or something like that. You got 16, almost a ton of bike going down the road. It's going to sit a lot lower, and you're going to ground out a lot easier on your turns. And I think that's what happens is they ground out on the floorboard or the frame, and then next thing you know, the back tire comes up, puts the bike offline. Next thing you know, either they hide side the bike or spin the bike out. Or they start to hit the floorboard, they get nervous, they back off the throttle really fast, which tends to straighten up the bike. And they tend to straighten up the bike as well as they're doing this. They cross over the line and they got to dip back, and then, bad things happen. And you'll see a lot of people, particularly, I find the worst riders on this, and I'm not picking on Harley riders, but are usually the bagger riders. So it could be Goldwing, it could be Harleys, whatever, the bikes with the bags on them. These people tend to be the worst for crossing over the line on curves. It's a bad habit. It will get you killed. If you notice you're doing this, again, you have to take in consideration that most roads around the world, you've got 10 to 11 feet of lane. There's no reason to be crossing over. Even if you're riding a little bit on the fast side, there's no reason to be crossing over the line. You're cheating death when you do that. The last thing I'll come across is, and if you are doing it, there's something you're doing wrong. Either you're not cornering properly because you're not looking in the right place, or you're just really sloppy riding, whatever it is. Whatever it is, you got to remedy it. But the last thing I'll say is, like right here, where you see I'm on my passing lane, I got a solid line on the other side, and I have now it's back to the double solid. But also don't, when you got passing lanes, move away from the passing lane a bit, because if somebody pulls out to go around you, they might clip you coming back in. So whenever you're near a passing lane, move in a bit. You should never be tight to the double line, but you should definitely should never be tight to a passing lane, whether it's on the other side or your side. It's just one of those things that I've noticed. It's just a strategy I use. Maybe it'll work for you, maybe it won't, but I know this. What won't work for you is going over the line. That is just something, if you're above your abilities, if you're constantly going over the line, it's probably because you're either riding too fast for your abilities, and you need to learn how to corner properly, and just do as much research on it. And when you're cornering, always try to run the nicest, smoothest line. Everything's got to be smooth. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. So smooth throttle through a curve, maintain constant speed, and if it's consecutive curves, and I think this happens more to people that don't ride as often, where they get a bunch of curves in a row, and they do the first curve fine, the second one they kind of blow it a bit, and then the third one they're way out, and then they're way over the line. And no harm, no foul if nobody's coming the other way. But if somebody else is, and it could be other bikers, it could be whatever, they're going too fast. They end up speeding up, and by the time they get to the second corner, by the time they get to the third, they're going way too fast for the entry speed. So be mindful of your cornering speeds when you're entering. Know the limits of your bike. How far can you actually corner? And don't cross the line. Alright, so I'll leave it at that. So anyway, have yourselves a great day, eh?